Oh, and we're recording. Just to let everyone know, we're recording this event and we will put it up on our website and Facebook page a bit later too. Okay. Tēnā tātou katoa, ko tai mai nei e tēnei ata. E te matana hau he whakatauki, ara ko te kai a te rangatira he kōrero. He mihi nui ki ngā Pākeke, he mihi mahana ki taku manuhere kaitohi ko Gary Lonsborough. He mihi nui ki a koutou katoa e tai mai ki te tautoko o te kaupapa e tēnei nei. E tēnei. Whakarongo, whakaaro, ako te matauranga e haere mai nei, ko Simi tāku ingoa. Nō reira, e te whānau, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everyone and welcome. I'd like to welcome you all into this Zoom with our wonderful author, Gary Lonsborough. He's joining us here from Sydney this morning, and as some of you noted, they're of course 2 hours behind us, so aroha mai because it is 8:30 his time. My name's Simi and I'm your chair for the next hour. I'd just like to start with a little bit of housekeeping and thank our sponsors who have made this entire festival possible. Not only is Same the only LGBTQI+ literary festival in Aotearoa, our sponsors have made it possible for us to make the entire program free this year. So mihi mahana to Creative New Zealand, Foundation North, ASB, the Rural Foundation and Heartland Bank. We also have patrons and supporters who make this all possible, like Proud Centres, Auckland Pride and Unity Books. So this session with Gary, it's going to be a conversation, but if anyone has questions, please pop them into the chat. We'll try and answer some as we go, but we'll definitely leave time at the end to answer your questions as well. So never fear, we're not going to miss out here. I'd like to start by introducing Gary Lonsborough. He is a debut author of a new YA fiction read, The Boy from the Mish, and that was, it's hot off the press. It was only published in Feb of this year. Gary is a Yuin man. He grew up in the far south coast of New South Wales, and I think you're there today. He has experience working in Aboriginal health, the disability sector and the film industry. He was Bega Valley Shire Council Young Citizen of the Year, won the Patrick White Young Indigenous Writers Award, and he's received the Copyright Agency First Nations Fellowship. Reading your bio, actually, I thought it was really important to note that you grew up a huge Kylie Minogue fan as well, which I really love. But I'd just like to invite you to say a few words about yourself.
Yeah, so I think you hit everything. Yeah, I'm an Aboriginal boy from Bega in the far south coast of New South Wales, and moved to Sydney straight out of high school to go to film school. So I did film school for a couple of years, and yeah, I've got 3 brothers, 1 sister. And we've got a pretty big family, cousins and aunts and uncles all up and down the coast. So yeah, we've got family everywhere. But yeah, I guess I've been writing ever since I was a little kid, and yeah, it's just something I've always loved, and I think it's part of our culture is to tell stories and pass those down. So yeah, I've been in Sydney for like 7 years now, and yeah, it feels like it was only yesterday that I left home. It's gone really quick.
Excellent. Oh, thanks, Gary. Just because your book's so new and maybe not everyone will have had a chance to read it yet, I just wondered if you'd like to start off by giving us a little reading so we could get a taste of your book. I've read it and it is fantastic. So I'd really like everyone else to sort of share that as well.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this is my book. Yeah, I'm just going to read a little bit from chapter 1. Yeah, so we don't give away any spoilers or anything. But I think the first chapters, I'm really proud of the first chapter. So, yeah. A car horn honks over and over and wakes me. It's Christmas Eve and the morning sun is blinding when I open my eyes. I forget to pull the fucking curtain across when I went to bed. and now I'm paying for it. Mum's big body booms on the hallway floor, followed by Henry's little rushing feet. As they creak down the stairs, he's asking her if his cousins are here, and she's saying yes. I stagger to my clothes, pick them up off the floor and slide them on. Jackson, I hear Mum call. I start downstairs. Auntie Pam is just inside the doorway, bags in her hand, wearing a purple top and shorts. All the kids run in from behind her, hugging Henry and cheering and yelling as loudly as they can. My little sand eater, Auntie Pam says. I go down, give her a hug and a kiss on the cheek. How's your art going? I don't really paint so much anymore, I say, looking to my feet. Oh, well, I got a boy who needs to do some art. You can help him out, she says, like I have no say in the matter, like she didn't hear what I just said about not painting so much anymore. Jackson, this is Thomas. He's living with me for a little while. She turns to her side to reveal a black boy carrying more bags from a station wagon. He has messy curly hair that looks almost like dreads, like he's never brushed it in his life. His skin is lighter brown than mine, but he has that curry nose. We'll put Henry down here with the boys and you can take Henry's room, Mum says to Auntie Pam. And we'll put the good mattress in Jackson's room so Thomas can sleep upstairs away from the kids. Who's that? Henry asks behind me. That's Tommy. He just got out of jail, little cousin Bobby whispers. I feel the strength of my eyebrows as they raise themselves. All the kids barge past me and Mum and race into the house.
Thank you. Makes me want to start reading it all over again. And I love the mums. It's like so like mums, isn't it? Telling you what you're going to be doing and you have no say in the matter.
Yeah.
I worked for a long time in publishing, and when we worked in publishing, you had to be able to sell a book in a soundbite. Now, I'm not going to put that sort of pressure on you, but do you want to let people know what your book's about, like a little short intro to it, so we all have an idea?
Sure. It's a young adult novel. It's about a 17-year-old boy named Jackson, who's Aboriginal and he's growing up in a small country town. And it's just about, his journey to self-acceptance and falling in love for the first time and, just, coming of age and that step he's taking into adulthood at this point in his life. And, but yeah, at its heart, it's just a love story. It's a teen love story. This happens to be between two Aboriginal boys. So,
yeah. It's a beautiful story, actually. And at the beginning, you were saying that you had been writing your whole life. And so I sort of preempted my first question. But I just wondered, I think I read somewhere that you were saying that you had been writing stories as a very young child. And I wonder what takes you from that sort of starting to write and writing for fun and then moving into writing seriously.
Yeah, I think it was just, I had the story come to me and, I'd always sort of aspired to be a published writer, somewhere down the track, but I just had the story come to me and I thought, after doing a draft or two, I thought I was good enough. So, that's when I sort of started working on it seriously, working on the edits and, working on the structure and all that stuff. And, so yeah, I think it was just that story that I got, and it sort of felt like it was good enough to be a real book. So I just sort of went with it. Yeah,
it's always like sort of slightly irritating to me when authors say that the story just comes to them. It never comes to me, but that's it does feel very seamless when you read it. Like it isn't forced at all, but. Who do you think your sort of influences have been with writing and what sort of got you started on that path?
I was thinking like early back when I was a kid, and I remember like mum and dad just telling stories around the house, or not bedtime stories, but we'd always be telling stories about something. And yeah, as a kid, I read a lot of like the Goosebumps books, and I read a lot of Paul Jennings, Andy Griffiths. So yeah, I was always sort of interested in books as a kid, and I guess that I sort of fell out of love with all that stuff in high school because I got more interested in underage drinking and partying. Yeah, And then, yeah, like I've had some really great teachers along the way as well, who's definitely encouraged me. And I think in my year 6 teacher in particular, and then my year 12 English teacher. But yeah, I've had a lot of, as a kid that had an interest, I had a lot of encouragement from adults. So yeah, it's really sort of hard to pin down exactly what's influenced me, but yeah, I think like growing up around a big family that's always telling stories definitely helped.
For sure. And do you think you set out to write YA, or what sort of got you interested in this genre?
I think sort of in leaving high school and then into my early 20s, they were just the stories that I loved to read. So yeah, I just love that. I mean, I know we hate it while we're going through it, but I love reading about that time in your life, where you're moving into adulthood, you're having all these first experiences, you're discovering all these things for the first time, and you're really just trying to figure out who you are and like what your place in the world is. So I really love reading like stories about characters going through that sort of coming of age, growing up time in their life, and yeah, I think that's just sort of how I've gone into it. It was just that I loved reading those stories. So I also love writing them because it's really, I find it's a lot of fun just to, because when you're writing about teens, you've got so much, like, there's a whole world of possibility, there's, whereas, if you're an adult, you've been sort of damaged by the world, I guess. So you've already seen, you're being an adult. So you don't have that wonder and that sort of optimism for the future, I think, that you have as a teen. So yeah, I think I like writing characters that are teens because they have they're more vibrant in my head anyway.
Yeah, there's something about that time, isn't it, that it's really pivotal, and you're sort of experiencing stuff for the first time, and there's something very exciting about that as you get older and a bit more jaded, it's not. I heard Angie Thomas say in an interview that it is that discovery time that we start to discover who we want to be as adults. Do you think that's even more important for our community, for the LGBTQI plus community? It's always so hard sometimes, isn't it? Tripping over those letters. But the rainbow community.
Yeah, I think, well, particularly for me, I think growing up, there just weren't any books I could find. Or, I certainly couldn't walk into the school library and find a book that had 2 Aboriginal kids, falling in love that happened to both be males. Yeah, so I think it comes back to that lack of stories, that lack of representation in young adult fiction, particularly in Australia. Yeah, it's just stories that reflect LGBTQI people or Indigenous people. They just weren't easy to access, I guess. So I think these days there's a lot more books around, but definitely when I was growing up there wasn't. So yeah, I think that's why it can also be hard to find yourself if you can't see yourself represented anywhere in books or in film or TV.
Yeah, you have no point of reference if you sort of, you're forging your way on your own. And I guess that's what's sort of exciting about our communities as well, as we get to do that a little bit, but it's also really daunting too. Like you're having to sort of, put yourself out there and not, have no role models like that. So I guess we're sort of, we're really talking about how important it is to see yourself reflected in books and stories. And, even like I think about the racism that is actually in both of our countries, in Australia and Aotearoa. And do you think these books are important as well for Pākehā and white people who read them and actually get a glimpse into a life that isn't, that sort of dominant discourse as well?
Yeah, I had an interview with a radio station. I won't name them, But I was asked by this white interviewer if I thought racism was still an issue in Australia.
Wow.
Which I thought was, a stupid question for one. But yes, it's, it was really important for me to paint a whole picture of Jackson's life in this book. And as Jackson growing up as an Aboriginal kid in country New South Wales, racism is just a part of his life. It's just, something that we deal with every day of our lives. So, I couldn't avoid it completely. But at the same time, I didn't want to focus too much on that in the book, just because, then it becomes an issue book or something.
Yeah.
Like that. But it was really important for me to, have that side of it in Jackson's story, because, that's just a part of our lives growing up as an Aboriginal person in Australia.
Yeah, and I think, like your book does deal with a lot of issues. There is a lot of stuff in there, but it doesn't feel didactic, and at the same time you don't gloss over it. It's not glib. But I think that what really struck me was that moment where they're talking about, the boys were like joking about the police, and it's really natural and funny, and it's the sort of thing that you say when you're talking about the police, but it's also very serious as well, because it deals with that issue of Indigenous people and people of colour being pulled over by the police more often, as we know. But it's and I'm not sure where that was going with the question, but it's just like a statement there. But I think that I really liked the way you sort of frame that, and it's interesting, isn't it, saying it's not an issues book, because I think it is, but it isn't. It isn't at the same time. It's a love story too, so
that's at the center of the story. So when I try to explain it to someone, I'm always saying that it's a love story. But at the same time, I'm just painting a full picture of Jackson's life, and those are just the things that he has to deal with. So,
sorry, don't cut you off there, sorry, but that really struck me actually, because I thought it's often when you read books about rainbow community or Indigenous people, it can be really harsh, because a lot of the realities of our life are very harsh, and but that's very hard to read all the time. Like I found that, what I loved about your book is that it has that reality, but it's also very uplifting as well. You don't come away feeling like, oh my gosh, and I think that's so important too when we're reflecting sort of our lives, that we show a rounded view of that. And how did you find that note? How did you sort of find that balance?
Exactly like you said, there's plenty of books, plenty of stories out there that portray the worst case scenario, or really focus in on those tough times. And I think for me, writing for young adults, I thought for myself it was important to be hopeful. It was important to show, to show those issues and those fears and worries Jackson has, but also to balance it out with hope. And it was I guess because I want, when teens read this, I want them to feel like there is happiness out there, and while there are all these other bad things that can sometimes creep into your life, there's a lot of good too. There's a lot of good to be found in love. But it was really important to me to be hopeful, and that also meant showing Jackson's friends to be very very supportive machine for him, and just giving him that the big family and the elders and the men's group and all that stuff. It was important for me to portray those fears he has, and because those are very real fears that I've had myself, and but at the same time just show the support that he can have, and once he gets over that fear, or once he you know, there are people that can help you through that as well. And so yeah, I don't really know how I balanced it out. I was very close to going, you know, full life at stake sort of thing. But yeah, I think ultimately just tried to pull it back and just make it more about, you know, Jackson's emotions and that emotional journey that he goes on, and you know, and also to show the supporting network that he has around him.
Yeah, you do really feel the love in the book, eh? Like with the community and his family, and yeah, it's very beautiful. I'm going to jump across here because Christine has said, congratulations, Gary. And did you ever stand back and wonder if your 7-year-old self would have predicted that you'd reach this moment in time, releasing your first novel at the age of 25 years? She said she read the book and found it not only humorous, but realistic and also romantic and very innocent. Thank you for such a great read.
Well, thank you, Christine. I think I've always wanted to be a writer. So, you know, I remember at 12 thinking, oh yeah, when I'm like 40, I'll write my first book and it'll be great. But yeah, there was always sort of a goal or you know, an aspiration of mine was to be an author. And, yeah, I think at 12 or 7, I didn't really think that was possible because there weren't a lot of Aboriginal authors around. You know, end of year 6, I was the last person in the class to get my pen license. Yeah, I think there's that goal would have felt a bit out of reach back then, but it was definitely always something I wanted to do. It was the one sort of consistent dream I had was to be a writer. You know, well, yeah, it was like if someone asked you what you wanted to be when you grow up, you know, I would have, depending on what time you asked me, I would have said several different things, but I think a part of that would have always been to be a writer or an author. So yeah, I'm grateful now that I've achieved that. You know, I feel like I am fulfilling my purpose in life, and yeah, I'm very good. Also, at the same time, I do feel very lucky.
Oh, I'm sure it's not just luck, Gary. And Christine's also said that she's a bookstore owner and she had a customer ask her what Mish is, and being Aboriginal, he asked her, and she said she was a little taken aback, but at least he asked and wanted to know. The bookshop keeper even said he tried to Google the meaning, bless him, which, you know, I wonder if you feel that pressure that, you know, weighted down by a sense of responsibility, because when you are writing from the perspective of someone in the rainbow community or Indigenous, that there often is an expectation that you are the voice for everybody, and you know, whether that felt like a lot and how you combat that.
Yeah, I've been feeling that, you know, interviews recently, like for instance, getting that question about the racism, and I've been asked a couple of times to explain, you know, what the mission is, what a mission is, and also to talk about the attitudes of Aboriginal communities towards, you know, LGBTQI people, which I can't speak for because I have not every Aboriginal person in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely have sort of been feeling like I'm being pushed to, you know, speak on these things, and that's definitely not sort of what I want to do. You know, I want to just write books and then that be it. But you know, I'm very comfortable saying that I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak for myself. But yeah, like I've definitely, and I'm also definitely happy to answer questions if, you know, if someone generally doesn't know what a mission is, or you know, things like that. I'm definitely happy to answer those sort of questions. But yeah, I'm definitely also happy to say that I can't speak for everyone and I can only speak from my own experience, which I think was like my main goal of my note from the author in the book, was to say exactly that.
Yeah, and that is the danger, isn't it, that, you know, when there's not enough representation out there, that a few people become those spokesperson for everybody, and it's like everyone goes, oh well, that's what it's like, and, you know, not sort of understanding that we're, you know, communities have a lot of different people in it, just like, all communities have sort of that variation range of people with different views. So a lot of the blurbs I've read about The Boy from the Mish sort of talk about it and focus on the story of Jackson, but I really felt like it was the story of both Jackson and Thomas and how they're trying to find themselves. And Thomas always seemed to me to be a lot more at home in his sexuality, but more sort of culturally adrift, and vice versa. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about your main characters and how you came to create them, and Thomas, because I'm a big fan of Thomas.
Yes, well, actually, I originally wrote the book from Thomas's perspective. So those early drafts were from Thomas's point of view, and he was a very different character. He wasn't as good as he is now. But yeah, I think the thing with Jackson and Thomas is, I know it's cliche to say it, but they sort of complete each other. So, Jackson's, is very connected to his culture. He knows, he knows his place in the community. And, one of the biggest fears for him is losing his place in that community and losing that connection to the culture. And yeah, at the same time, he's very scared of, his sexuality. He doesn't understand it all that often. And he's, also, just got all this shame inside that, comes from growing up the way he did and the influences that he had. Whereas, Thomas is, he's sort of more comfortable. He doesn't have as many roots, so he's sort of okay with being, being vocal about his sexuality, or making those sort of advances to making those moves on Jackson. So, but yeah, unlike Jackson, he's very disconnected from the culture. So, so the sort of opposite ends of the same sort of coin. I definitely had a lot of fun writing, especially Thomas. I wanted to keep his sort of background very, mysterious for most of the book, but and then we slowly learn more about him, and similarly with Jackson, as he becomes a little bit more comfortable and he finds himself falling in love with Thomas throughout the book, and I really enjoyed writing that love story, and at the same time writing all these bad things that would stop them from achieving what they wanted. But it was a lot of fun, especially when I first started writing, it was all about the love story. Everything else came later. It was all just Jackson and Thomas's love story, and they are the story. They are the whole book. So
it's interesting that you say that Thomas was your main focus initially, because I feel like he's a very rounded character. He's certainly not just a sort of foil for Jackson. He's and I think, like, as an adoptee, for me, I really resonated with Thomas and that story of connecting with his culture. And do you think that so I've lost my train of thought. Do you think that sort of, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I read something about people saying that books and stories are universal, and that teenagers the world over have the same concerns. And do you think that that stories resonate with a wide range of people because our stories are somewhat the same, or is it the difference that we resonate with, do you think?
I think it is that difference, that intrigue, and understanding, being able to step into the life of the character whose experience you're not familiar with. I think that helps to intrigue people into reading these sort of books, and I definitely feel a lot of the themes I touch on, the coming of age, the falling in love, the getting to know yourself and your sexual identity. That's all very universal for teens. So, I guess the only real difference here is that it's a male-male relationship rather than a hetero. I think those differences and, those the things that happen that Jackson and Thomas have to go through, they're all very universal issues to that teen experience. So yeah, and that's all the story is. At its heart, it's just a love story. And you know, I think anyone can relate to love. And but yeah, at the same time, you know, if you're not from this culture, you can step into those shoes and you can understand why an Aboriginal boy would get nervous if the cop car was pulling him over, or you know, yeah, I think books are a window into the lives of others. So you know, I certainly love to read experiences that differ from my own. But yeah, at the same time, I do love reading LGBTQI books. But
yeah, we want it all, don't we? We want the books that are different from us, and also the books that reflect us as well. So that's not a bad thing. Want it all.
Yeah.
Now, Christine has just said that she's so happy your book got up, and that the voice of Jackson is so natural and reads effortlessly. She said, did that come naturally, or did it take some work, and was it always written in the first person?
Yeah, so I guess once I started focusing on Jackson as the main character, I very much just, you know, as a person who doesn't plot out before they write, I just wanted to throw all of my own fears and doubts that I had as a teen into Jackson to, you know, to make him more authentic and relatable. So look, it was really easy for me just to put all of my, you know, my own train of thought, my own fears that I had as a teen, my own issues that I had as a teen, my own sense of humor. It was very easy just to put all that into Jackson as the, you know, as the drafting unfolded. But at the same time, you know, there's a lot of editing that happened and a lot of reworking, and but yeah, I think that's why Jackson's got such a good voice, is because it's very personal to me. You know, I'm trying to, through Jackson, articulate exactly how I felt as a 17-year-old Aboriginal boy growing up in the country. And you know, I think that, you know, being vulnerable and personal in the way that you tell the story, that's what readers connect to. So yeah, I guess it was both easy and hard at times.
Yeah.
To paint that picture of Jackson.
Yeah, it's hard when it's something so personal, isn't it? Because it's almost like you're putting, you know, your story out there for people too. Like it's, you know, did it ever feel that it was a bit too personal, or were you worried about that? And
yeah, there was a time, I think maybe early on in the process, where I was, you know, because I was articulating how I was feeling as a teen, and really trying to, you know, be as authentic as I could with Jackson. And there was definitely a time where I started feeling like maybe I'm being putting a little bit too much of myself in here. So yeah, I definitely pulled that back a little bit. There's definitely a lot less of myself in the book now, but yeah, I think it was important to go there though, just to, you know, make Jackson a great character. And you know, it was much easier for me just to, you know, pour it all in at the start and then slowly pull back as I went. Yeah, but at the same time, you know, it still very much tells the story of how I felt as a teen. You know, while it is it is a fictional story. A lot of the thoughts and fears I had as a teen are very much present in Jackson. But yeah, and then there was a little period of time, you know, leading up to publication that I sort of had this, not emotional breakdown, but it was this massive cloud of fear over my head that was like, oh shit, this book's going to go out in the world and everyone's going to read it. It's going to have my name on it. But yeah, I think, you know, like my own sort of journey, I just needed the time to get used to that idea and move myself past it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that sort of living in rural communities and small communities, and you were talking about the fear of, you know, coming out and losing, you know, your family connection because of that sort of idea, and then how, you know, I think a lot of kids when I was growing up had to leave small towns because it wasn't okay to be yourselves there. And, you know, do you think things are changing and that those small communities are more accepting of their queer kids?
That was definitely how I felt.
Yeah.
And, you know, I only finished school in 2013. But I moved to Sydney straight out of high school. So I think definitely moving away helped me a lot. And you know, I think it was very important to, you know, get that space from the area.
Yeah.
Because my feeling at the time was that it was very, you know, not accepting. You know, there were these labels that we just put on these couple, that there's very few LGBTQI people around town. You know, so as sort of like everyone sort of knew who they were. There was definitely that, you know, that attitude reinforced by the stereotypes that you got through, you know, film and TV of the 90s, early 2000s. You know, Friends is one of my favorite shows, and watching it now, you realize how many homophobic jokes and you know, just amazing. And you know how easily that was all accepted into popular culture.
True.
But yeah, so that's all. You know, that's sort of what influenced my own sort of shame and yeah. But I think these days it feels a lot better. You know, I feel like I can be myself when I'm back in vegan now. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more like resources for the community. You know, I know there's like a support group at the high school I went to, which just would have been unheard of when I was there like 10 years ago. You know, for LGBTQI. Yeah, and then there's a couple programs in this area in particular that are, you know, trying to build that supportive network for those kids. So I think things are. I can only, you know, I can only speak for like the Bega Valley. So I'm definitely feeling like it's more accepting these days than it was like 10 years ago. And you know, now there's other people as well that are you know, being positive and giving a positive representation in the community, which, you know, hopefully I'm one of those people as well, maybe. But there's definitely opportunity, and it's definitely that's definitely the case here in Bega.
Did you start writing before you moved? Did you start writing this book before you moved away, or when you were in Sydney?
No, I was a few years in Sydney by that point.
Yeah.
I was 23 when I started writing.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Oh, we were just in the festival. We've been talking about the concept of home and how there's something about being away from home that almost gives you that distance to reflect on home. And I wonder if that sort of freed you up to write this book, you know, being away and being able to look at it with a different lens, eh?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, you know, I think that distance from home helped with a lot of things.
Yeah,
definitely with the book. I would have never written a story about a, you know, gay Aboriginal kid if I stayed in Bega, I don't think. But yeah, you know, once I moved to Sydney, so I think it's true for anyone who then has to leave to find themselves. Yeah, it's just that freedom. You know, I felt very much like I was free. You know, I was able to open my mind to writing these sort of stories. Yeah, I definitely think moving away helps.
Yeah, there's a degree of reinventing yourself when you move away, eh? And sort of in that self-discovery that you get to explore lots of different parts of yourself and in a way that you can't when you're around people that have known you your whole life and sort of pull you up all the time. Oh, no, that's not like you, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like you have no barriers then.
Yeah. Oh, now I'm just going to have a look at some of the questions. So is it difficult for young LGBTQIA Aboriginal people to connect with each other is coming out as difficult in your community as it is elsewhere. I think you have talked a little bit about that, and you're not the representative for everybody. So we'll make that clear before you answer.
Yeah, I will say, I definitely think, you know, there's a better world now than there was 10, 20 years ago. So I'm hoping that the kids these days that are going through these things don't feel as scared, or they might feel a bit more hopeful than like me or you did back. I don't know. But I definitely think, you know, these days there's things like Black Rainbow and you know, those sort of initiatives that are helping people, and you know, there are those resources now that people can look for, and which just wasn't really, it was much harder to, you know, find that sort of supportive network, I think, you know, like 10 years ago, for instance. I guess I don't really know if it's easier or not.
Yeah, because I guess everyone grew up in the time they grew up in, and we only we're looking at it from outside now. Like, we're not, you know, a young 13-year-old trying to come out at a high school and in your community, like it's now Selvin has said congratulations on the book. Were there any alternative endings to the story, and will you write a part 2? I like the idea of asking you, are there alternative endings to this book?
Well, yeah, so I guess when it was when Thomas was the main character, the story sort of ended, you know, him just leaving, you know, well, okay, not to give the ending of this book away, but okay, Thomas leaves and in this alternate ending, and then sort of goes back to Sydney and tries to, I guess, it's sort of reflecting on the whole thing, and then basically comes out. So it was definitely very much a coming out story originally. But yeah, I sort of tried to, I didn't want to go down that path, I guess, too much. Because there's plenty of coming out stories out there. But I don't think, apart from that, I don't think there was any real alternative ending. Yeah, it was always, I think it was always this way. Since I started writing from Jackson's point of view anyway. Yeah, there were no alternative endings. And I have been asked before if I'm going to write a sequel. No, it really wasn't part of my plan, but I was just thinking like recently that it'd be interesting to see where they were in like 5 years' time. Something like that.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking that when I saw the part 2, I thought it would be interesting to see them in, you know, somewhat in the future, eh? Like, not, you know, that might be a... Are you working on anything else at the moment? That's a horrible question, isn't it? When you've just had a book out. I'm really sorry for that, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
No, that's fine. I've just been working on another YA manuscript. I pretty much got started as soon as I got my book deal, so I started writing again right away. But yeah, it's just another YA manuscript. It's another story about an Aboriginal kid. That's all I can really say at this stage. But yeah, it's definitely working on something else.
Fantastic. Now, Christina has said that she went to high school in Nowra. Have I pronounced that properly? And it was much the same. Yeah, she doesn't remember anyone being openly gay. It wouldn't have been safe. Do you imagine this will be picked up by the schools, and would that be a goal for you?
That would definitely be a goal for me. You know, I think schools are that important place where you know, your identity is forged, and I think particularly in the country, it's you know, it is hard for LGBT like kids because there usually isn't that support. There's not those books, there's resources. Like I can imagine like sitting in maybe like year 8 English class and a teacher making us read this book about, you know, there's 2 Aboriginal boys who fall in love, and just being like, wow, that would be really interesting. And yeah, I think it's important for, I guess I don't really have any say in the matter, but I would love to see the book in schools. And
Yeah.
I would love to have been able to walk into my school library and, pick up this book and read this story about this Aboriginal kid who was going through exactly what I was going through. So yeah, I think it is important to have those conversations at school as well. The conversations that hopefully the book will invoke. And but yes, I mean, short answer to the question, yes, I'd love to see it in schools.
Yeah,
I'd love to see more books like this in schools, and particularly so those LGBTQI kids have those resources around.
Yeah. And just as an aside, I think, oh yes, look, Shanta, we've put a link to buy the book as well, to buy your book, because I think it is the goal of every author to have your book everywhere, actually. And I think that, we'd like to see it out there. Now, if anyone else has questions, can you feel free to pop them into the chat, and I think we'll open it up to ask Gary some questions now, because we've got a little bit of time left. Don't feel any pressure. I'm sure I can give people a minute or two to write. But yeah, I think there's something about being able to walk into a library and see those books that are for you. And I always think that about online buying, that you go online to buy the book that you want to buy, but when you walk into a bookshop or a library, you often find the book that you need to read in a way that you can never do that online. And that's just like a little plug for buying locally and not buying online from some large companies that we might not mention today. Right. Just seeing if anyone's got any questions. They're all very quiet today. Maybe I've asked too many questions.
Oh. Yeah, I just forgot. I was meant to say it's Valentine's Day today. So this book's got a love story in it. It might be a nice present.
Yeah, a really nice present to buy on Valentine's Day. Yeah. Gary, Jeremy's just asked, do you get much direct feedback from YA readers? Good question there, actually.
Sort of through my writing process, my sister was my YA feedback. So I've basically bounced everything off her. I've had a couple of people reach out since the book came out on the 2nd, and basically send me a message saying how much they loved the book and that sort of stuff. Which it was really nice. But yeah, I definitely it is definitely important if you're writing YA to get that feedback from YA readers, because I'm only 26, so I don't feel like I'm that far away from the teens of today. But at the same time, the world changes so fast. Like there was no TikTok when I was at school. I'm having to talk to TikTokers and things.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So yeah, my sister was my YA feedback from the writing of this book. Yeah.
Cool. Now, Anna Maria has just said, thanks for giving up your time. You've made me want to go get your book for our school library. So, and like if you're a teacher out there and think that you might want Gary in for an author talk, you might. Sam said, what draws you to YA specifically?
I think it's just that that coming of age sort of narrative that you often get with YA. It's very much the story that I love to read, is that coming of age, taking that step in adulthood, the loss of innocence, the first experiences So yeah, it's the stuff I love to read, so it's the stuff I love to write as well. Yeah, it's definitely just that, you know, that growing up, that coming of age that draws me in.
Yeah, you really feel that actually in the book, that it is something close to your heart that you love, because it definitely shines through. Right. And I haven't like prepped you on this, but would you like to read a little bit more from the book before we go, or you don't have to, you can say no.
Yeah, we haven't planned for
I
this.
just like sprung that on you. I'm very sorry. I just wanted to hear a little bit more, but you don't have
to. Well, if there was a particular part you'd like me to read.
Well, I'm a huge fan of, there's two bits that I actually really love, and one is when Uncle Charlie talks to him. But is that giving away too much, or should we? Let's just hold on to that one. I think you need to read the book, and I'm not going to ask you to read it because I can tell that like everyone here needs to go away feeling like they need to read more. So Julie has said, do you do author talks online apart from this one, of course, and like a New Zealand, like if a New Zealand school wanted to employ you for a session?
If I'm interested in doing those, is that the question?
Yeah, she's asking whether you do author talks and whether you would do something online for a New Zealand school. This might be like prepping in the future.
No, definitely. I've got a couple school talks lined up for the near future. So definitely something I'm happy to do. You just need to either get in contact with me via my website, GaryLonsborough.com, or you can contact my publicist, and who's on my contact page as well on my website. But yeah, just drop me a line on there, and yeah, we'll try to organise something.
Excellent. And Anne-Marie Stewart says, so very proud of you. Your book is at Bomaderry Public School, where she works. So yay to all those librarians and school teachers out there. Hey, well, I think we're heading to a close. If people have another quick question, feel free to drop it in right now. But I'd like to, and there's the link to your website as well there. I'd like to thank you so much for coming and chatting with us today. And it's been wonderful, and you're so generous and giving your time. And I can only urge everyone here to go out and buy a copy of their book for themselves, and one for a friend, and one for someone they love today. But it's a beautiful read, and I think you've got a very bright future. And when you're really famous, I hope you'll remember that, you know, we interviewed you, and you might want to come over and do something at Same in the future. But yeah, thank you. And we've got lots of love coming into the chat for you here, saying thanks, can't wait to get my hands on your book. It's been an amazing, appreciate your generosity. Thanks to me for bringing Gary to our attention. Nice to hear your story, Gary. Your book is on pre-order at our public library, and shout out to Same for making this possible. Thanks to both of you. Thanks very much. So that's lovely. So, thank you, everybody. And thank you from So Awesome, says Jack Trollope as well, who is actually a local artist here. So shout out to him. Anyway, thank you, Gary. And I really appreciate you coming on today. And thank you, everyone, for joining in and listening to Gary. And we will have this recording up on our website later. So if people have missed it, they can watch it again through our website and our Facebook page. Kia ora.